And I'd say all of these things pretty much have happened besides this item, which I'm working on now, and the CI/CD backbone. So let's talk about these. What was essentially everything in my personal account over to the new business account I can easily show as part of this grant. So the basic architecture is essentially looks kind of like this. We're gonna call it arc1 components. Is going to be the front of which is the front. It is calling a lambda for the options, but it's also calling directly to the EC2 instance. Right now it's an EC2 instance that is running the Unicorn microservice. All right, and this is the actual workload. Nice, we're getting a little bit of an architecture together. So this is API workloads. Cool. Now, we also have a front end, and the front end is actually talking to those microservices, which is our static web app. And this is a React app that is, so we have CloudFront. Note, right of CloudFront. This is the web app. Okay. So the client makes a request to CloudFront, which goes to the S3 bucket. So, yep, DNS and Route 53 to CloudFront. Yep. And then the client is also going to make calls to API Gateway in the same way. It's going to go Route 53 to API Gateway. Here we are in CloudFront. Look at that! Distribution. And basically, if we look at the distribution domain and we look at alternative domain, that's that. Here's the cert. As we're using a combined cert that has, all of the domains under xurlpay.org. Both the dev and the production, it's kind of like a star cert, but it's for, it's specifically for... We set the alternative domain, and we set the origin for this to be the S3 bucket, where we're actually pushing everything to, and then the edge will put that out to the edge so that all the geographic regions can be supported. So there isn't like, the origin is super fast, and this is going to work everywhere in the world. And if we actually open it up, you can see here, there's the front end to it, right? And all that's really doing is pointing back to S3, and then for Route 53, we just do a CNAME so that our domain is fronted in front of it. And if we go to API Gateway, we can see here's our API called xurlpay API, and we have two stages right now, dev and prod, and these are tied to the get flow model that I was showing you before. The way get flow works is the key idea is that the CI/CD is driving deployments automatically. So if you're confident enough in your PR to push, you're confident enough to have it deploy. And so that's why we have a PR process. We review it, we make sure there's tests that run in the PR, so that when you push into dev, and it actually goes live in dev, and then you test it a lot in dev, and then you merge it to master, and you tag it as you do that. So this is really this kind of basic concept here, right? That correlates to the two deployments that we have. And really, they're just proxy. This is just a proxy back. I don't try to actually... I'm not doing any kind of complex mapping into an API or into versioning. So, and I don't like to use API Gateway for that because it's kind of complicated. I mean, I think there are use cases where you might need to, but this is not one of them. So this is just a straight up proxy. We go to custom domain names. You can see here, I haven't deployed production yet. I only have dev API deployed. Here's that cert, right? So I've basically mapped that cert to the dev API domain for the API part of it, and then that goes all the way down into the EC2 instance. So if you look down into the EC2 instance, I have a Elastic IP that I've put in front of my EC2 instance, right? So it's mapped to this EC2 instance. So if I build a new EC2 instance, I can easily swap this out and not affect the API. Dev.xurlpay work. We have it running. We've logged in, and we can go to the wallet, and it's it's doing stuff. It's working. And if you look back in the back end, we go to tools and we go to developer tools. And let's just do a refresh on this. You'll see that it's making calls back to that API, right? Over HTTPS. And so what makes it secure is that it's doing everything with a JWT. So the app itself is protected via JWT. So it's stateless. So we can scale horizontally easily, and just the JWT would be used across, multiple instances in a round-robin type request. So if you look in here in the authorization, there's our JWT, right? There's our bearer token. And that JWT is actually created by the Xumm app. So that's what makes this a real Web3 type application. By scanning, and you can see when I did that, it said, "Oh, you've actually scanned," and it knows in the backend. Well, they have a set of webhooks that let you subscribe to an event created by a payload. So I'm going to sign in, and that's successful. And what you should see is that when the auth2 flow comes back, I'm logged in. So now I am here, and now I have access to the wallet. And so that JWT that's generated is what my application is using to do all the activities. And Unicorn isn't like I said, an ASGI web server, which means it's asynchronous. And what that essentially means is Python has an asynchronous pattern. And if you've ever used async.io, you kind of know how that works. But this is a framework that gives you two things. It first gives you an asynchronous dispatch into the routes, which is routes is the kind of basic way that the web server routes a request thread through all the way to the database to do a transaction and then give you a response. So this has a asynchronous pattern for that. And then second of all, it also, if you use FastAPI, and I'm going to show you that in a second, it allows you to, as you're building out your microservice, to actually document it as well. And we're going to get into that in a second. But I really wanted to kind of focus on these two kind of challenges around doing the pattern that I'm doing with Xumm, so that if other people are doing this, they can understand it. The first challenge is that you really want to have some sort of CORS middleware, and then FastAPI adds this kind of really easy way to document all that and to turn that into a Swagger OSGI documented API. Create a custom middleware for CORS. I don't know why the Stellar CORS middleware, they have support for CORS middleware. For whatever reason, it was not getting invoked. And so I created my own custom CORS support middleware in the middle. Your payload generation. From that point on, because we're assuming you have got a JWT that's valid, that's created by the wallet, all you're really doing is generating payloads for specific use cases. So here we are. This is a payment payload. What will happen here is that when you create, when Xumm gets called, like when a deep link's called, all it's really going to do is generate a payload and then send that payload onto your wallet. Then we have these payment items, and these are what creates the durable payment capability. And you can see you can code it to a different currency if you want. So what this is doing is essentially creating a deep link to the xurlpay app. And if we look at the code, this is what gets generated when you make that call. So here's the Xumm app. So this is basically a deep link to this endpoint. And what happens here is this has an XApp token. So this isn't JWT protected here. This is an XApp, and every XApp, when it gets invoked, passes along an app token that allows the API to determine what wallet made the call. So that's what this XApp token is about, right? So we get what's called an XApp session from that, and that has all the state and the context of the calling wallet. So this is a payer's wallet session. And in that is the ID of the payment item that is going to be paid. And so that's used to actually look up the payment item. And once that payment item is looked up, a payload can be created that represents that payment item. We also look up what the wallet is that owns that payment item so that we can, figure out which wallet needs to be paid. And we know that that payment item was all legit because that payment item was created by a JWT. And so then the payment request is created and a payload is created for the paying wallet phase. Let's see here. EC2 instances. Cert transfer. We got that done. We got API gateway up and running. We got CloudFront. We got this done, but and then we did port from Flask to Unicorn. We're working really, really hard to make a great framework for developers to work in. So I want to make a goal to actually both vet the new client-side API from that team and to do a write-up. Yeah, we're going to be doing some more stuff next week, and I'll see you then. Thanks a lot. Thanks for coming.